Hey everybody, it's Dave Dugdale, learningvideo.com. Now you guys know I shoot a lot of video with these, but I love shooting stills with them too. I get inspired by photographers just as I guess you guys get inspired by DPs. So when I was approached if I wanted to take a workshop with Dave Black, who was like a very famous sports photographer, I was like, hell yeah, I'll do it, because I do a lot of stuff for my summer swim league and I would love to elevate my pictures, especially in sports related pictures. And it sounds like this workshop has been around for a while.
This workshop's been going on for over 30 years. Rich started it around Olympic festivals way back, then continued it on with a partnership with the Olympic Training Center. In the early years, Kodak would come and they would roll up with a truck where they would process film. Every student got 2 rolls. So there's been quite the evolution.
Now, Dave Black is not the only sports photographer in the workshop. There's about maybe 10 other instructors, but I knew Dave Black from watching Kelby training, and he's a wonderful teacher.
Coming in, you'll get a student that says, I'm coming to learn from Dave Black. I'm coming to learn remotes with Mark Terrell. The number 2 things we get back is, I learned so much in the critiques.
I would say the best part of the workshop, where I learned the most, was during the critiques. So basically what would happen is in the afternoons we'd all go out and shoot at a lot of different venues with the instructors, and there was 10 instructors and lots of different venues, multiple venues going on at the same time, from rodeos, tennis, rugby, there was like skateboarding, velodromes, basketball, you name it. There's a lot of different sports to photograph, some that I've never photographed before, which is pretty cool. And then the next morning, what we'd all do is we would submit 3 photos and no one would know whose photos were being displayed. They would give us good feedback on what photo could use improvement. And if you needed to improve a lot, they wouldn't ask whose photo it was.
You'll notice in the image critiques, the instructors will ask from time to time, who shot this photo? That is 100% because that person just went on their radar. They find talent through this workshop. It's just an addition to a Rolodex. But there's a lot of ways to get connected here, and that image critique is a great way to show them your talent and your talent on the fly.
Now this workshop was about 5, maybe 6 days long. And I think it was 2 of the days they actually asked about my photos. They asked for my name. So I was like patting myself on the back. It's like, whoa, I actually did a pretty good job. Because one of the things about this classroom is you could see a lot of people's laptops open and they were basically processing their image. And you could see their work. And some of these photographers were way above my level. They were some really good photographers there. Now, in terms of when you process the image, they didn't allow you to process the image that much.
We allow some Photoshop and touch-ups done to the images if it's how you saw the photo. We don't encourage people doing a ton of work to the images because that's just not how they saw it, and we want to see it how they saw it. We want to see a true image and a true photo without all the back-end time put into it.
We went shooting rugby in the afternoon one day, and I was with Andrew Hancock, which is one of the instructors. I think he was saying that he had there's only been one photographer that's had covers of 3 different magazines like Sports Illustrated, Time, maybe National Geographic. I think that's what he said. There's only one photographer that's ever been on all 3, and I think that's Joe McNally, and he's had 2. So I guess he's a pretty good photographer. All these guys were amazing. You got to see some of their work. Anyway, we went out to this rugby game, and I was trying to get this low shot of these guys interlocked in battle or whatever, rugby. I don't even know the game very well. And he was kind of back behind my shoulder. He said, try to clean up the background, try to get rid of those goalposts and some of the other stuff if you can by changing the angle of your camera. Well, I tried when I was out there in the field, and one of the good shots I got had one of the goalposts in it. So later on that evening, when I was post-processing my image, you're really allowed to do some tone controls, you know, with contrast and stuff like that. But I was sitting there, I was like, you know what? I wonder how good these photographers really are. So I was like, well, let's test them. So I went in and took an eraser tool or whatever that tool is in Photoshop and just basically erased out the goalpost. And there was actually 2 other people in the photo as well. I was like, I'll take those out too. I've already moved pixels around. Let's move around even more. And then the next day, during the critiques, my image went up on display and they said, "Oh, good job." They're like, "Who did that photo?" And I was like, "I did." And then later on, after the lights came up, I'm walking out of the room between breaks, and Andrew's in the background just smiling, and I walk up to him, and he's like, "You did some Photoshop, did you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I did some Photoshop." So I'll own up to it. I was kind of testing you to see actually if you'd catch it, and he did. These guys are amazing, have an amazing eye for all this stuff. He could actually remember 24 hours before, trying to clean up the background. He didn't actually see the image behind my display, so he didn't know if I got it or not, but he could actually see kind of a defect in the image where I didn't do Photoshop very well. So these guys really have an amazing eye. Now, it's a really interesting dynamic with all these teachers. A lot of them are older. Andrew was one of the younger guys, but a lot of these guys were like leaving for the Olympics right after this workshop. And, some of them were actually not even photographers. They were editors like at Sports Illustrated, which is, if you wanted to be doing any sort of sports photography, this would definitely be the place, because if you ever wanted to get an office visit with one of these editors to have them look at your images to be hired by Sports Illustrated, I mean, you can have lunch with these guys. You can go, on a first name basis with these guys, and they can actually see your work up on the screen. And I think that's kind of why they're there. Now, out of the probably 30 attendees, I think I was the only Sony shooter in the room. And I think there was maybe 2, maybe 3 other people that were on Canon, and the rest of them were all Nikon. In fact, this workshop is sponsored by Nikon. And there's one class or session at the very beginning that was very Nikon centric. And I was like getting worried because I was, the instructor was like, "Now take this button and move it over here and do this." And I'm like, "I don't have any of these buttons on my camera. What are you talking about?" They all have like D5s or D500s, and they have 600 millimeter lenses and 400 millimeter lenses and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't have any of that stuff. So I don't think you have to be too worried that you don't have Nikon. And in terms of the attendees, like I said before, they're all very talented, and some of them came from very far distances. There were some from the East Coast. There's some people from Australia, 2 people from Australia, and another person from another country, when everybody went around to introduce themselves. So there were some pretty talented people in the room. In fact, like I said, there's probably thousands of really great sports photographers out there. The instructors that they had in the room, these guys are like some of the best. And not only are they good at what they do, but they're also very good at teaching. And it's kind of interesting dynamic between these teachers. Some of these teachers have been coming from, I talked to one of them, he said he's been coming for 16 years. I think they feed off each other, and they like to see each other at least once a year in this room. And a lot of them were leaving for the Olympics right after this workshop was over. I know several of them were going to the Olympics to shoot. So these guys are at like the top of their game. And it was just, really nice. You'd go to lunch and you'd sit right next to one of these photographers, and you're like, how would I shoot, this scenario? I want to use flash maybe underwater for the Summer Swim League, or I want to use flash. And like one question I had for one of the gentlemen was on autofocus. As somebody does the butterfly and comes up out of the water, there's usually droplets that come up and spray in front of the swimmer's face. And I was like, how do I get the camera to not autofocus on the water droplets, but on them if I'm shooting at like f2.8? And he said, what you want to do is play around with the focus tracking and the focus sensitivity on the Sony cameras. And you should be able to find a sweet spot. And he was showing me some of one. He was just doing the Olympic trials for swimming. He was there in Omaha, and he was showing some of his photos of some really famous swimmers, and they were just perfectly in focus right on their face. So I learned a lot in terms of that. So I would highly recommend it if you're into sports, or if you're into doing stuff with your kids like I am. So that's pretty much it. And I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.